Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live. And on today's wellness segment, we will be discussing two crucial aspects of women's well-being, that being exercise and fitness, as well as financial independence, with our resident wellness expert, Ronald Abvajee. As we mark Women's Month, let's shift our focus to empowering women through, yes, healthy living, but also smart financial decisions. So let's dive into these important topics and learn about how women can enhance their lives in both these domains. Assalamu alaikum, Ronald. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Prime Live.
Wa alaikum salam, and always great to be here.
I mean, it is finally Women's Month, and I'm super excited to delve into the types of conversations we'll be having over the month regarding all things health and wellness when it comes to women. But to kick off our conversation today, we're going to start with the fitness aspect of our health and wellness journey for women. Why is it so important for women to make sure that they prioritize their health and particularly their fitness, and incorporating some kind of fitness routine or some kind of fitness regime into our daily schedules, or even, maybe 2 or 3 times a week? Tell us all the tea.
I'm going to tell you the tea, and people don't have to hate me for giving the tea, but it is about identifying and owning the truth. The reality is that we know many women put themselves last on their list of priorities. And that's a reality. I've seen it in my family, I've seen it in other discussions I've been having in many circles as I do a lot of keynote talks. And I ask the question, why? And they're like, because I'm a mother, or because there's other things to be done and I have to get them done. So when you put yourself last on your list of priorities, often when something goes wrong, you only realize you should be doing something. And then you step up into band-aid solutions more often than not. So we need to flip that script for women. You are the most important person in your life. And when you can accept that truth and own that, because you cannot look after others if you are not looking after you. I refuse to give the analogy of the aeroplane and the mask story, but that's our reality. You need to look after yourself. Why is health important? Well, health is important because a lagging indicator of not identifying where you should be focusing on from a health perspective, physiological and biological health, is one. We know that diabetes is one of the top killers in the country. We know that the stats show us that women in South Africa, the 68% of women in South Africa are overweight and or obese. We also know that diabetes is compounded by being overweight, and a lack of activity and incorrect nutrition compounds that risk exponentially. We also know that women have the risk of breast cancer and, of course, cervical cancer, the top 2 cancers that impact women. Can exercise prevent it? No, but exercise can mitigate your risk. Exercise brings an appreciation and awareness of the body. So when it comes to your breast health, self-examination is the number one thing that you could do every day. And when it comes to cervical cancer, it's the awareness of going for your gynecological visits, going for your pap smears, etc. Awareness, awareness, awareness. And then also we need to look at the reality of socioeconomic concerns. We need to look at the reality of women fighting in the workplace. Why should women fight in the workplace to progress? You have the skills, you're talented, more often than not is higher, emotionally, intelligently acute to do a job, do the job. But they're facing this constant barrage of impact, and that impacts your health. So, fitness, where does this all, Ronald? Fitness! Where do I fit this into my diary? Fitness is a leading thing that you could do to prevent downstream issues, both mental, emotional, and physical well-being issues. Physically, you will obviously look after your cholesterol, decrease your strategically placed padding or body fat, and mitigate the risks of lifestyle conditions or non-communicable diseases. Secondly, physical fitness helps you de-stress. It releases the serotonin and the dopamine and allows you to really look after your mental and emotional well-being. And also, there's a lagging impact. The lagging impact is you doing something for you that you enjoy. And when you do it with a group of people as well, or other women, hey, there's power in strength and in teams. And we've seen this in the Olympics and other team sports. So fitness is critical, not just from mental, emotional and health, but also from engaging and social health.
I love that you addressed that and you told women overall that they need to be the most important person in their lives. Because yes, at the end of the day, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And women for decades have been putting everyone else before themselves. And I love that, this is the energy we're going into Women's Month with, is teaching women how to prioritize themselves. Now, we've talked about all the different responsibilities that a woman can have. And that's sometimes why their plates are so full. And they often can't find that time for fitness and health and to prioritize themselves. But Ronald, can you share with us some simple, easy routines of exercises that women can incorporate into their day-to-day lives, or maybe twice or thrice a week, that they can be able to prioritize themselves and set that time aside as me time? This is the time I'm going to be prioritizing my health and fitness. And what are some of the best forms of exercise that women can do that are easy and yet effective as well?
So it's whatever suits you from a consistency perspective. If you find joy and fun in going to a gym, by all means stick to that and do that consistently. If you find fun in playing paddle or walking on a golf course, enjoy that. But here's the thing that you should realize as a woman, and as a man, but anyone out there, but women in particular, your body is your gym. So the the three fundamental pillars of your routine is always cardiovascular exercise, because that helps look after your heart health. It helps burn calories. It helps, keep the body energized, and of course helps you release those hormones that you want to release, those feel-good hormones. Strength training is critical. We know that women have less testosterone in their bodies and thus less muscle mass. So the more strength training you do, you mitigate the risk of osteoarthritis, osteoporosis. But guess what? When you do a strength training routine, your metabolism burns on average for 20 hours thereafter. Guess who's burning strategically placed padding? Strength training gives you that gift. And finally, mobility and flexibility is critical. We know that women are at higher risk of back injuries because of the lordotic curve if they have given birth or are pregnant. So it weakens the lower back area, but also the core, which is absolutely important. But mobility and flexibility allows you to bring in yoga, Pilates, or a combination of the two. And finally, find a sport that you enjoy if that's what you really have fun doing. But fundamentally, strength training, you're looking at twice a week. Cardio, you're looking at 3 times a week. And you can do it all in the comfort of your home while watching the show in 10 minutes. If you do that every day and you build that up, you can do half an hour 3 times or 4 times a week, and then of course decrease the frequency, but you are consistent.
I guess it takes effort to be able to set that time aside and say, this is my me time, and doesn't matter what is going on. If I'm going to watch my show and do my cardio or run on my bike or run on my treadmill or cycle on my bike while I'm doing it, that is my me time. And I think women need to start making that time in the day that's just for them, not running behind kids or worrying about somebody else or worrying about what everyone else needs of them, but just to prioritize themselves just for that little bit of time. And I agree with you. I mean, besides the health benefits that you get from exercise, it also has an incredible impact on your mental health and well-being. And we know that prioritizing mental health is something that's incredibly important. And that's going to take me into my next topic of conversation, is mental health and, the state of mental health in women in South Africa. Women are under an immense amount of pressure and stress. Just existing as a woman in South Africa is dangerous. Just leaving your door, you are putting yourself under a lot of different risk factors in terms of your safety and your well-being. We know that women in South Africa are at risk of being violated in so many different ways. The statistics of rape, domestic violence and abuse in South Africa is enormous, and the rates are constantly, and the statistics are realistically getting much worse. And just that pressure of having to be a woman in South Africa can be enough to drive anyone crazy. And we think about the workplace, and you mentioned the workplace and how women have to consistently fight to be equal, to be seen and to be valued in the workplace, can also play a huge role in the deterioration of women's mental health. What can women do better in South Africa to look after their mental health and make sure that their mental health is in check?
You're right. I don't think women are at risk of that. Women are experiencing that. South Africa is known as the rape capital of the world. South Africa is rife with gender-based violence. And it's become so normal to hear about that you sweep it under the rug, which for me is unacceptable in any form or way. In being on both ends of the spectrum, there's no excuse for it. but there's also no reason why safety shouldn't be a top priority for women. And if we can't create safe environmental spaces, I mean, that's a process, that's a journey. That's about, you finding times to leave that you don't leave in the early hours of the morning, maybe getting into a lift club and so forth. But the reality of the majority of women in South Africa that end up going to work is waking up at 4 in the morning, if not earlier, leaving your kids before the sun rises, and you have to walk to a taxi rank. You then have to get to work. You might or might not have food. You then have to fight for a lot in the workplace, depending on the environment that you're in. We also know that women bully women in the workplace. Let me not hide from that fact. It's called the queen bee syndrome. That if I'm on top, I'm going to push the ladder away so that you can't come up. I'm going to break you down because it took me so much to get here. I'm not going to lift anyone else up. So there's a lot happening for women in this world, especially in South Africa. And I don't know about you, but even as a guy, I'm tired of hearing you got to be resilient. I am so tired of it, because how much more resilience do I need to have? So what I can share is the principles of mental health and mental well-being and mental acuteness and mental fitness. For women, never negate your superpower. Your superpower is that you can own and embrace your emotions. That puts you leaps and bounds ahead of any man I know. Because in embracing that, you can accept where you fall short and what you're feeling and own it. The second thing is, when it comes to your mental health and well-being, I just stepped out of a conversation today with someone that was being abused and bullied in the workplace. And I said, it comes to the point where you need to make a decision for you. And whether it's meditation, stress management, those are tools that you could bring in. But the reality is, you need to have spaces of psychological safety and emotional safety, whether it be at home, whether it be somewhere else. And if it's not home, is it actually home, or is it just a house where you don't feel safe? If it is the workplace, how does the policies, how does the culture, how do those things that are at your disposal, how do they protect you, and how can you utilize them to ensure that you have psychological safety? So it's not a flick of a switch solution. But what I can share is that if you surround yourself with other women and people that when you're down will lift you up, and when you're up will lift you higher, that is a start of building psychological safety for yourself, because everyone is slightly different and nuanced differently.
No, I couldn't agree more. I've bore witness to the women-on-women hate, and that is sometimes far worse than the kind of pressure or sexism you might experience from a man, because there is very much this culture amongst women that to see each other as competition instead of being able to enable each other and work together. And we see a lot of that in social circles, in professional spaces as well. We see a lot of that, and we need to see less of that. And you find a lot of women who will say, I actually prefer working with men. It's just easier. There's less drama. And I've heard a lot of women saying that. And that's definitely a key factor we need to work on this Women's Month, is being kinder to women. Being woman to woman, working together and being able to not see each other as competition, but rather as an opportunity. If you see a woman that is doing better than you, that's smarter than you, instead of seeing her as your competition, see her as somebody who can mentor you. How can you learn from her, and what can she actually learn from you? And something beautiful that you said is that we're all tired of being resilient, and we keep asking people to be resilient irrespective of how difficult the circumstances are. And instead of addressing the circumstances and making the environment better and making the country a little bit better, we are asking people to be resilient instead of fixing the integral problems that are exactly there. But a part of mental health, part of well-being and overall well-being for women is also financial independence. Can you talk to us a little bit more about why it's so important for women in the world, in this very modern world and century, to be financially independent? And what are some of the tips and tricks that you could share, some financial advice? Because we know we are very much lacking in financial education in our education space, in our schooling systems. It's just very, very much lacking, and a lot of people don't have access to that much needed financial education. So could you share some tips and tricks on how to better manage your finances as a woman in South Africa?
Hey man, we all need that input and shares, right? But here's the thing. A lot of it is to do with cultural beliefs and norms that we grew up with. The other reality is this, is that for women, here's the thing. One is there's a lot of battles happening behind the scenes for equitable pay. We're doing the same job, we do the same qualification, there's no reason as to why. And that's a fight that's happening behind the scenes more often than not. But When you look at it, one is if you do have a partner, a husband or a spouse, what you then look at is having a discussion regarding finances and really treat it clinically. What's our budget? What are we going to save? What are you bringing? What am I bringing? If your partner has got an ego complex or grew up thinking that I need to earn more than what my partner does, I am the provider. It's not about I, it's about we. So there's a fundamental shift that if that's what you embrace as a life choice, then that's your choice. The second thing is follow the principle of thirds. And when I say thirds, it could be slightly less, or you could figure out the ratio for yourself. But it's the intersection of what do I need, what do I have, and if you're in the quadrants of I'm overspending, I'm in credit, I'm living on credit cards, or I'm overburdened, I'm going to my shonyisa's, I'm shopping at rather expensive places rather than places that are just really affordable to my means. You are living in the dream, not the reality. Shift from the role into the reality. Just because your friends wear red bottom heels, hey, I'll give you red paint. You can also wear red bottom heels. Don't live for the ego, live for the reality, and never lose sight of tomorrow. So the rule of thirds is a third that you just put away. You don't touch it, you forget about it, it goes off your account, it's savings, investment or savings. The second rule of thirds is, what do you actually need for your expenses? And finally, the third rule would be is, hey, what do I have a little bit excess that I could enjoy what is in the parameters thereof? You could change those ratios depending. And the other reality is that we know that there's a thing called black tax. So it's black, Indian, colored, trust me, it's tax, second to SARS. And that's a reality where you have to create boundaries with family members and friends to say, I'm sorry, I just cannot. And it's not because I don't care for you, it's just because I need to care for me. So to weave it back to the golden thread, women, put yourselves first in every facet and get the right advice from the experts in the industries, financially, from the workplace, from the health perspective. And when you get the right input for you, make those right choices and action them consistently every day.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ronald. And that is absolutely the sentiment that I'm going to take away and remember, is that women, put yourself first. And I hope that is the biggest takeaway that our viewers at home also have from our first conversation, our opening conversation for Women's Month. But Ronald, thank you so much for once again joining us on Prime Live and not just sharing tips and tricks on how to maintain a healthy mental health and a healthy body in terms of fitness and exercise and putting yourself first, but also sharing some much needed financial tips and tricks for women. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Absolute pleasure.
Viewers at home, that is Ronald Abvajee, our resident wellness expert on all things overall well-being. So that's fitness and exercise as well as mental and financial well-being. But this is Women's Month, and we are kicking off Women's Month with an absolutely insightful conversation with Ronald. If there are any other topics or any areas of conversation that you would like us to delve into this Women's Month, please do engage with us on our social media platforms. We would love to hear from you. And if you have any questions on any of the topics of conversation we had today, please do engage with us as well. Remember, women, definitely put yourself first. You are the most important person in your life. On that note, viewers, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll see you when we come back.